Here is another video about SMMware, software for handling sales, project management, operations, and more. Today we'll discuss scheduling in SMMware. Okay, let's begin. Starting here on the home page, we're going to scroll down to the section My Schedule, which is exactly like it sounds. It will only show you events that you are part of, either as an attendee or as the main contact, as opposed to every event that's in the system. The exception for this being salespeople who have the option of displaying events for jobs that they sold. This means that they don't have to be a formal attendee for those events in order to be kept informed about them. There is also an option whereby you can see your unavailability options here under the My Schedule feature. Moving on, in my associate profile, if I have the access to the company calendar, the master calendar, I will see this calendar link here in the main menu. I'll click on that. So now this really is the company calendar. It shows every event in the system. We will start down here in the bottom in the filter section. The idea in SMMware is that you can tell something about an event based on the color. SMMware offers 30 of these tags. You can customize them as far as the text color, and the background color. Here within the filter, we can mark some of these off. When we hit filter, we can narrow down which event types we're going to see in the display. We can also filter based on a particular job, a particular sales lead. In this case, the associate by filter lets us see events for which a particular associate is an attendee. For instance, somebody may complain that they're not getting as much work as others, so this way you can look at the calendar and get a sense of whether they're in fact correct. We're going to look at this in a little more detail later, but we're going to look at the Include Availability option. For each date, we've added an entry which shows you when people are available. That is a planning tool. When you're done with your planning steps, you can go back and turn that off. This blue icon at the top indicates that this system is integrated with Google Calendar. This represents the selector for monthly view, weekly view, and daily view. This red outline indicates that an event is tentative, such as this one here. That way people know about the event, but also realize that things may change. We also offer a search function with additional criteria. The output is in a list form, so that way if the events span multiple months, it'll all still show up next to each other instead of being spread out across multiple grid views. You can also export that as a CSV file. You can jump back to the main calendar view now. Look at an individual event. We can see the time range for when it's going to start and end. We can see the name of the client, and we can see the initials of the workers who are going to be there. When I click on this, I will get detail, including the map link seen here. And that will bring us to either Apple Map or Google Map, and they will give you your turn-by-turn GPS directions. Coming back here to the main view, we're looking at the rest of the details for the event. There's also a section for client confirmations. If they confirmed via email or text, it will appear here. If they confirmed via both, you'll see both. Next, we have the main contact. So if you have say an office manager who handles all of your scheduling, the notifications will go out saying that any questions should be directed to them, and their name and phone number and email is provided. Next, we have an event lead. This is the person in charge of a particular event. We have a team lead that is in charge of the overall job, which may consist of multiple visits to the client, multiple events, and each event can have somebody in charge of it. That's the event lead listed here. Next, we have the list of workers with their full names and their times that they're going to be on site. If you're using the invite-based approach to managing which workers are going to be there, we would also see their status as invited, requesting, denied, or assigned. Next, we're going to create an event. First thing we're going to do is select one of the tags, in this case, job. And as soon as I say that, then SMMware naturally wants to know which job. If your system is set to involve moving your clients, you'll see icons like this. This is a house with an arrow pointing out of it. This is a house with an arrow pointing into it. When we click on those, we get the code that generates the map link back in the main view. If your system is set not to involve moving clients, you'll have a single icon, just the house, and that will get you their current address. Looking at the text here in the description, that is preset in the settings editor and is meant to tell you what kind of information you are looking to collect at this stage of the game, but it does not lock you into always having to collect that information. You can just get rid of it if you don't need it this time around. Here's where you can set the main contact. This is where you would set an event lead. Here's where you can mark the event as being tentative. When you create an event in SMMware, the assigned associates get notifications, but you can skip that using this checkbox. We also have Reminder 1 and Reminder 2 that go out to the assigned workers. When you create an event in SMMware, it will send out a notification to the client, but you can use this checkbox to skip that. Sometimes you have to correct a spelling error, and you don't necessarily need to tell the whole world, so you might use these skip boxes just to avoid that. Here we have the Reminder 1 and Reminder 2 for the client notifications. If the client had already confirmed, those would be listed here, just like they did in the pop-up on the previous view. Here we have a reminder about our definitions for our skill codes. Next we'll talk about managing who's going to do the work. SMMware has 3 different ways of managing the attendees, and each of those 3 ways has its own underlying assumptions and way of thinking. We'll start with the direct approach. Thinking here is that you had a company meeting or you're driving back from the last event and you set up who is going to do the work on this one. You had an agreement and you don't need to get any help from SMMware for this. You just want to formalize it, put it into the system. So the notifications that go out for this will be simply saying you are assigned. Notifications can go out via text or email. The next approach is invite-based, and here we will set a team size as well as a respond by date. The respond by date does not lock anything in. The workers can still reply afterwards, but this is your way of telling them when you would really like them to have given you a response by. There are different ways that you can use this. Set a team size of 3, and we're going to invite 5 people. Let's say that 4 of them can do the work, 1 of them says no. Then you come back into SMMware and you would have an assignment phase where you would set your final 3, and the 4th person would get a notification saying that they were not assigned. The next approach is first come, first serve. So you invite everybody in the company, and the first 3 that respond will get a message saying that their response has been recorded. Everyone after that will get a message saying that the team is full. Another approach is multiple rounds of invitations. So if we need 3 people, we pick the ones that would really like to do the work. And then if one of them cannot, then maybe we come back and add someone else. And we just keep going until we have our full team of 3. The notifications that the workers get have links in them where they can say that they would like to request being part of the event, or they can decline to be part of the event. On the home page, there is a section called My Invites. My invites for upcoming events. And here I can also click on request or decline. Coming back to our event in progress. The first 2 approaches that we've talked about can be thought of as client-driven, because first you figure out with the client when the work should be done, and then it's up to you to fill in the slots. This next approach can be thought of as associate-driven. It is called availability. The first thing that happens here is that associates go into the system and enter when they cannot work. And then when you're sitting down with the client to figure out a time, you will have this timeline across the top. You will have a list of employees down the left. You'll have green bars that represent that someone is available. If they had blocked out some time as not being available, then you would simply have a chunk missing from the green bar. I can navigate between days and months and weeks using the nav bar here. When I'm ready to start assigning shifts, I'll click on the green available bar. Generates a red shift. I can drag the start and the end to set the times. This is our fanciest approach because the other two assume that everyone is arriving and leaving at the same time, whereas this approach allows you to have different arrival and departure times. You can go ahead and save this. Once you have created an event and assigned people using availability, and things change as they inevitably do, you can come back here. If someone says that they are having a doctor's appointment and they cannot attend this event anymore, or any other event for that matter, we'll click on the bar that says assigned and it'll change to say released. And when I click on save, that will leave a gap in this green bar because they can't work on any event, not this one or any other one. On the other hand, if the work for this particular event has gone down so that you just don't need them for this event, but you may still want them on another event, what I will do is click on this blue bar, the second click, and that will turn it back to a green available bar. That way when I hit save, this person can be assigned to some other event. Next we have another planning tool called the availability table. This has dates across the top, it has workers down the left. If a worker is qualified to be an event lead, their name will be in red. Here is an assigned event. It has a background color and the name of the client. If the time range does not have any kind of a background color, that means that they are available. We can click on the names of people in the left-hand side. That will bump them up to the top. So if you have a long list of workers, you may want to gather them up together at the top, review them before deciding exactly who your team is going to be. Next, we're going to look at an associate profile. Here is the portrait for the worker. This will be included in the client notification if this person is the event lead, which makes the client more comfortable opening the door. Sometimes you have people who work in the main office and never go out on events, and you don't need their name to appear in the list of possible attendees, so you can mark them as being not invitable. Here's where you can indicate how somebody wants to be contacted. Maybe they want to be contacted via email only or via text only, maybe by both, and very rarely neither. Here is the main permission that gives somebody access to the master calendar or the company calendar. And here is where you can indicate the skill codes for this particular associate. Here under the sales role privilege, if somebody is a salesperson, they can choose to monitor the job's events. Moving back up the page for a moment, this section called iCalendar has to do with having a given associate's events appear on a third-party calendar, whether that's Google Calendar, their Apple iPhone, or their Android phone. We have a separate video that covers that in detail. Next, we'll jump over to the settings editor. Go to admin and then settings. Start off in section 1. This is where you can define your skill codes. Again, the idea is that you're going to come up with an abbreviation for a certain skill and a certain rating. SMMware also offers you the option of having that calendar link appear as part of the main menu or as a sub-item under the admin menu. Next, we'll look at section 4, the calendar section. Many of these settings are self-evident, but we'll focus on a couple of them. When SMMware shows you the availability table, it can be cluttered with very small blocks of time, which you cannot really make use of, and you can tell SMMware to ignore blocks of time that are shorter than what you consider useful. Some people might say that they need at least a 4-hour block of time for it to be useful, for instance. When you first start working with SMMware, you might want to get notifications as the event creator just to make sure that you understand how things work. But after you've worked with the system for a while, you might consider those notifications to be redundant. Obviously, you know about a new event if you're the one who just created it. So then you might come here and set this to no. When people respond to their invites, the main contact can be notified. This is where you can say that the reminder should fall a preset interval before the actual date and time of the event. That's true for reminder 1 and 2 for the associate and reminder 1 and 2 for the client. This is where you can set the subject and the body of the email that goes out to the client for their notifications. When you're looking at the week view and the day view, by default you'll see the basic view, which matches what we've seen so far. There is something called an agenda view, where there's a timeline along the left side of the entry, and each event shows a start and end time, and they overlap. Get a little bit more of a sense of when they're starting and ending. When people change their availability or unavailability, you can have someone notified. And here's where you can enter the email addresses for the people that you want to receive those. Here at the bottom we have our event tags. You can put in the label. You can say that you want to hide it if you're going to not use it anymore. You will map it to something, either a sales lead or a job, or most common. You might also want to map it to an organization in case you sometimes go to give in-person seminars at an organization, or you're going to go meet maybe a marketing director at that organization. Then we have the colors for the text and the background for that tag. And that sums up our overview of scheduling in SMMware. To find out more, you can visit our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SMMware, or you can visit our corporate website, www.smmmware.com. We appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon.